Since I have a spare cluster for my W124 project, this being it here, I wanted to have a go at painting the needles to make them orange again. If you're not aware, this is not the color they're supposed to be. They're actually supposed to be a basically fluorescent orange. And the hash marks between the 50 and 60 kilometers an hour is also supposed to be the same color, I believe. The sun has faded away the orange and only left the yellow behind. This is clearly evident when you remove the gauges from the actual housing and see where the orange paint has not been exposed to the sun. This is a prime example here, where the hash marks between 50 and 60 have never been exposed to the sun. They're still fluorescent orange. I wish I was able to fix those areas, but I'm not aware of any way of doing that other than replacing the actual plate itself, getting one made in the aftermarket. I doubt they're still available new. This is the paint that was suggested to me by other members on YouTube. It's a pretty close match. It's not as bright orange as the original would have been, but when it comes to these choices, there aren't many. I think Dayglow Orange is more accurate, but I'm not aware of any way of getting that other than in massive quantities, and that's just not practical. I could have used a higher quality brush. These are the cheapest ones I could find at my local Kmart. I spent a grand total of $4 on this project. Other than the paint was very cheap in itself. I got it from eBay and the seller was in Taiwan. It took almost a month to arrive, but it's cheap and it's a fun little project. And once it's back together, it's going to look good. Just be sure to mask off the black areas like I've done here, and allow it to dry before getting the needle to touch its peg position. I used a hot air gun to basically bake the paint on these needles after I finished to make it a bit glossier and to dry it as well. When you're dealing with such small quantities of paint, it dries very quickly anyway. But just to be sure, I'm not going to install these in their housings in case there's still volatile gases escaping from them. I don't want to cloud up the inside of my cluster. So tomorrow, once I'm well and truly sure they're dry, I will reassemble the cluster. These two gauges are pretty straightforward. Nothing overly difficult about those as long as you've masked them up correctly. The needles from the clock actually come off, so I painted those off the gauge itself on a piece of paper. This is the masking job I did for the other section of the cluster. That worked pretty damn well actually. As long as you've got a steady hand, you can apply these bits of masking tape and avoid getting any of the orange paint on the black areas. I didn't have an issue, but obviously not everyone has a steady hand. And this is just my hot air soldering station. I have set the temperature to 100 degrees Celsius. It's the lowest it goes, just to get the surface a bit glossier and to assist with drying, as I don't really want to leave the paper on there for an extended period of time in case the needles stick to it. But this did the trick, and they were effectively touch dry in seconds. Just to be sure, I put non-stick paper between the pegs of the two needles that require them to make sure there's no paint transfer overnight. The picture is a bit washed out here because I've got my lighting on at the moment, so it's not a true representation of what it looks like. This image here taken off my phone is more accurate to what the eye sees. It's not so washed out, and I'm pretty happy with the end result. It's not bad for someone who failed art class in high school, I must say.